It's strange to admit, but I became who I am now not by choice, but by necessity. When the man I'd trusted with 2 decades of my life betrayed me, it shattered something deep within me, something I thought would never mend. I spent days curled up in bed, not eating, barely speaking, letting the weight of my husband's infidelity swallow me whole. But grief, like muscle, changes when tested. One morning, I woke up, looked in the mirror, and didn't recognize the woman staring back. So I made a decision. I would rebuild myself. One drop of sweat, one stretch, one aching breath at a time. That's how I found sport, not for vanity, not even for health, but to survive. I threw myself into running, weightlifting, swimming, yoga, and even squash. I craved the burn, the trembling muscles, the distraction. And to my surprise, Adrian joined me. Adrian, my son, my rock. He was only 16 then, still finding his way, but he saw what I was doing, saw me trying to stay afloat, and without saying much, he followed me into the gym one day. I think he just didn't want me to be alone. Now, 3 years later, we're inseparable when it comes to workouts. Every morning begins with one of us knocking on the other's door. Circuit or squash, he'll ask, grinning, towel draped over his shoulder. He's become a man. Not just in height or muscle, though he is both in plenty, but in how he carries himself. Calm, confident, protective. There's something in his eyes now that wasn't there before. A gentleness, a sharpness, a kind of watching. Let's do squash, I said that morning, tossing him his racket. But be warned, I'm feeling extra competitive. He smirked. I'll try not to go easy on you. I rolled my eyes. Please. You always go easy on me. The court was our confessional. When the doors closed, when the echo of bouncing rubber filled the space, we left behind the expectations of mother and son and became something else, opponents, equals, teammates in sweat. We ran each other into exhaustion that morning, collapsing afterward on the floor of the empty court, our backs damp with sweat, hearts pounding in our chests. You're getting better, he said, his voice breathy. Better? I feigned offense. I should be leading by now. You keep surprising me, he said, glancing sideways at me. Always have. There was something in his voice that caught me off guard, something thoughtful. His gaze lingered for a moment too long before he sat up and ruffled his damp hair. I laughed it off. That sounds dangerously like admiration. Should I be worried? Not worried, he replied, his tone lighter now. Just aware. Aware. The word echoed in my mind the whole walk home. Lately, there had been moments, times when I caught him looking at me in ways that made my stomach tighten, not in fear, but confusion. Tender, almost proud, but also, sometimes, possessive. Like the time we were stretching in the park and a man came over to compliment my form, and Adrian's entire posture shifted. He was polite, of course, but his jaw tensed. He watched the man leave before asking, "Do you even like being approached like that?" I had shrugged, more amused than anything. Depends on the day. And then he'd muttered, "Guys don't see the way I do." I should have asked what he meant, but I didn't. It's not that I think he's aware of it, not fully. He's 19, young enough to still be learning where to place his emotions. But I'm not blind. I see the flickers. The tension when someone flirts with me at the gym. The quiet pride when strangers ask if we're siblings instead of mother and son. The way he lights up when I wear my hair loose, or the subtle change in his mood when I dress up for an evening out. I pretend not to notice. Because what else can I do? That evening, as I walked into the kitchen wearing a fitted black dress for dinner with a friend, just a friend, I caught him staring from the hallway. He didn't look away quickly like he usually did. "Wow," he said simply. I froze at the threshold, keys still in hand. "Too much." He shook his head. "Not enough." It was the kind of thing a man says to a woman when he wants her to stay. Not a son to a mother. But I smiled anyway. "I'll be back before 10. He nodded, his expression unreadable. "I'll be up." And I knew he would be. He always was. I came home just after 10, like I said I would. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the kitchen light I'd forgotten to turn off. I half expected Adrian to be in his room with his headphones on, lost in one of his late-night gaming marathons. But there he was, in the living room, sprawled on the couch, eyes fixed on the muted TV. He looked up as I walked in, and the screen's flicker painted his face in soft shadows. There was something about that stillness, him waiting for me, that made the air feel heavier than it should. "You stayed up," I said, easing out of my heels. "I said I would." His eyes swept over me again, slower this time. "Dinner was good?" "Fine," I said, placing my bag on the counter. "It was just a friend catching up." He nodded, but the look in his eyes told me he didn't quite believe it, or maybe he just didn't want to. He sat up and patted the space next to him. "Want to sit a while?" I was about to put something on. I hesitated, then sank down beside him, pulling my legs under me. The fabric of my dress whispered against the couch, and I saw him glance sideways again. There it was, that flicker. Not inappropriate. Not quite. Just watching. He queued up a movie. Some thriller we'd seen before. Neither of us really watched. The room was warm, the only light coming from the screen. I rested my head back, stealing glances at him when I thought he wouldn't notice. His jaw had sharpened in the past year. His hands, once too small to reach around mine, were now large and steady, hands that had helped me carry weights, steady a squash racket, hold me when I twisted my ankle last winter. We had shared so many things lately: sweat, laughter, silence. But now we shared this too, something unnamed that crept in through the spaces between words, lingering in pauses and glances. He shifted slightly closer, his thigh brushing against mine. It was subtle, casual enough to dismiss. But we both felt it. "You looked really nice tonight," he said suddenly, not looking at me. "That dress. It suits you." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Thanks." I wasn't sure it still fit. "It does," he said, and there was a quiet certainty in his voice that made my chest tighten. I turned to look at him, eyes narrowing playfully. "You've been paying attention." His lips lifted at one corner. "I always pay attention to you." It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it, like a confession slipped into an ordinary sentence. I looked back at the screen, my heart picking up speed. I didn't know where the line was anymore. I only knew that we were both closer to it than ever before. "Adrian," I began, meaning to change the subject. But he turned to me then, his face inches from mine, his eyes soft but intense. "Do you ever wonder if people see us and think we're something we're not?" he asked, his voice low. I blinked. "What do you mean?" "When we're out. At the gym. People always assume we're together. Like a couple." I didn't answer right away. Because it was true. Strangers often gave us second glances. One trainer at the gym had even asked if we were dating. Before either of us could answer, Adrian had laughed and said, "No, but I get why you'd think that." At the time, I had brushed it off. But now, "I've noticed," I said finally. "Do you correct them?" he asked, watching me carefully. "Not always." Silence again. Except it wasn't silent. It was full, like the moment before a wave breaks. "You've changed, Mom," he said after a beat. "In the best way. You're stronger. Brighter. It's not just me who sees it." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "It took a lot to get here." "I know. I saw you fight your way back." I turned to him then, our eyes locking in the flickering light of the TV. He reached up to brush a stray hair behind my ear, his fingers light but deliberate. "I was scared of losing you," he said. "After Dad left, after everything, I didn't want you to fade." "I was fading," I whispered. "But you pulled me back." He didn't move away. Neither did I. Somewhere in the movie, a car chase erupted, bright flashes filling the room, but we didn't look away from each other. This wasn't a moment that needed explanation. It just was. He leaned forward, his forehead resting against mine. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just closeness. Breath shared in the space between words. I should go to bed, I said, my voice barely audible. He nodded, slowly pulling back. I'll be here. And I knew he meant it in more ways than one. As I climbed the stairs, my legs trembled, not from fatigue, but from all the things I didn't say. From all the things I might someday soon. I woke to the scent of cinnamon and butter. For a moment, still cocooned in sleep, I thought I was dreaming. But then I sat up and saw him, Adrian, standing at the foot of my bed with a tray in his hands. The early morning light filtered through the curtains, catching the faint blush that rose in his cheeks. Good morning, he said softly, almost shyly. I blinked. What's all this? He stepped forward and placed the tray over my lap. Breakfast. I wanted to surprise you. I looked down. Pancakes shaped like hearts. Strawberries sliced with delicate precision. Even a little flour in a glass at the corner of the tray. You made this? I asked, smiling despite the warmth rising in my chest. He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. I watched a video online. Wanted to get it right. I reached for the fork, overwhelmed and quiet for a second too long. It's beautiful, Adrian. He sat on the edge of the bed, watching me take my first bite like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. I wanted you to feel seen, he said. You always make sure I have what I need. I wanted to do that for you. I looked up at him, and in that moment, I saw it. The man beneath the boy, the gentleness beneath the strength. Not just a son caring for his mother, but a young man pouring his heart into small, quiet gestures, hoping I'd hear the unspoken between them. You do more than that, I said. You see me when I don't even see myself. His smile was soft, his eyes lingering. After breakfast, we decided to go to the squash court again, laughing as we packed our gear. It had become our ritual, our wordless way of staying connected through sweat and rhythm. But something was different that morning. There was a nervous energy in the air, like we were both waiting for something to change. We played hard. He moved with more power than usual, and I pushed back just as fiercely. But then, on a faster turn, the ball ricocheted off the wall and struck me hard, just below the waist. I cried out before I could stop myself, doubling over as the pain pulsed through me. Elena, he rushed to my side, his hands catching me before I could drop to the ground. Oh God, are you okay? I nodded, wincing. It just caught me wrong. Sit down, he said, voice tight with worry. You shouldn't move right now. He helped me back to the car, his arm firmly around my waist, guiding me as if I were made of porcelain. I didn't resist. Back home, he settled me into bed, propped pillows behind me just right, and brought over a glass of water before disappearing into the kitchen. Just lie still, he called. I've got dinner covered. When he returned, he carried another tray, this time with a bowl of soup and slices of bread still warm. He placed it on my lap with a quiet pride, then sat beside me. You didn't have to go to all this trouble, I murmured. He looked at me, eyes clear and sure. I wanted to. You do it for me. Every day. After I finished eating, he took the tray away and came back, crawling onto the bed without a word. Gently, like I was a lighthouse in fog, he laid his head on my stomach and let out a long breath. Just let me stay like this a while, he whispered. I ran my fingers through his hair instinctively, feeling his warmth against me. Tell me something nice, he said, his voice low. I closed my eyes, searching for the memory. When you were little, I said softly, you'd wake up crying and nothing would soothe you, nothing but warm milk. I'd sit in the rocking chair, holding you against my chest, and feed you slowly. You'd fall asleep there, warm and safe, with your tiny fingers wrapped around mine. You were so delicate back then, so fragile. And I loved you more than I knew how to explain. He didn't move, just let out a slow breath, his nose brushing my side. "You still do that," he said after a moment. "You still make me feel safe." My hand rested on the back of his head. The room was hushed, the only sound our breathing, his soft and steady, right against my chest. His warmth was more than physical. It was emotional, woven with years of care and something newer, something neither of us had yet named. I looked down at him, this boy who had become my anchor, my mirror, my closest companion. And I didn't move. His head rested gently on my stomach, the way it used to when he was small and sick, needing the kind of comfort that only closeness could give. But this was different. His weight was warm, grounding. His breath was steady and slow, rising and falling against me like a lullaby I hadn't realized I'd missed. He didn't speak for a long time. Neither did I. Then, with a quiet hum, he shifted, his fingers drawing soft, idle shapes along my sternum. A circle, a line, the faintest pressure, like the whisper of rain against a window. His touch wasn't invasive. It was thoughtful, curious, as if this part of me, this space above my heart, held answers he didn't yet know how to ask for. "You always used to hum," he murmured, his voice so close it vibrated against my ribs. "When you fed me." I remember the sound more than the song. I smiled, my eyes tracing the curve of the ceiling. It was always the same melody. I just changed the words depending on what kind of day we had. What were the words the night I got sick and wouldn't stop crying? I closed my eyes. "My brave little star, you shine so bright. Even when you're scared, I see your light." He sighed deeply, the sound aching with something he wasn't saying. Then he sat up slightly, propping himself on one elbow beside me. His hand came to rest gently on my side, near the spot where the squash ball had hit. "How's the pain?" he asked softly. "It's okay now," I whispered. "I should check it, just in case there's bruising." I hesitated for the briefest second, but nodded. He moved the blanket carefully, his fingers brushing against the fabric of my shirt as he adjusted it just enough to reveal skin. His touch was clinical at first, but then slower, more deliberate, as though mapping something far more complex than a bruise. His eyes met mine. "You always look out for everyone," he said, his hand stilling against my skin. "Let someone look out for you for once." The air between us shifted again, subtle but undeniable. I reached up, brushing my fingers lightly against his jaw. "I don't always know how," I confessed. "I'll teach you," he said, almost like a promise. And then he leaned down. It wasn't rushed or uncertain. It was careful, like a truth unfolding between two people who had spent years protecting something they hadn't dared to name. His lips found mine, softly, reverently, as though he was afraid the moment might dissolve if he moved too fast. I didn't pull away. I didn't want to. Instead, I let my hand drift to the back of his neck, fingers threading into his hair, anchoring him to me. It wasn't a kiss filled with questions. It was a kiss made of everything we had already said without words. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads resting together, the silence between us wasn't tense. It was full. Of breath. Of feeling. Of something that couldn't be undone. Adrian opened his eyes slowly. "I don't know where this goes," he said, his voice low, thick. "Neither do I," I replied. "But I know what I feel." I nodded, my heart thudding so loudly it felt like he must hear it too. "So do I." He lay back beside me again, this time curling slightly to fit the curve of my body. One hand rested gently on my waist, his thumb moving in quiet circles as if to remind himself that I was there, that this was real, that we had crossed into something new.